Look, if you think that by nagging, using sarcasm, or accusing your partner you're fixing your relationship, I have to tell you that you're just starting a civil war that you won't win. This video isn't for those who just want to complain and moan. If you can't hold your tongue and speak like a mature adult, don't waste your time here. In this section, I'm going to expose a truth that is the Achilles heel for most men. Directly criticizing a woman's character means closing every single door of influence to her heart. I've experienced the pain of how, when I attacked the person instead of the behavior, I turned her into a cold-hearted enemy, just looking for a way to retaliate. I learned that authority is about expressing your need in a way that makes your partner volunteer to meet it, rather than feeling humiliated. If you don't know how to walk through this minefield without blowing yourself or your relationship up, be prepared to stay stuck in a vicious cycle of fighting and silence forever. You're about to learn how to use surgically precise words to create change without leaving a scar. Step into the unseen. Welcome to the ultimate masterclass in decoding the female mind. The psychology of constructive criticism versus character assassination, the fine line between correction and destruction. Greetings to our sophisticated and discerning audience. Today, we are embarking on a deep dive into one of the most fundamental yet elusive survival skills in the architecture of a resilient relationship: the art of expressing dissatisfaction. Every individual within the intricate dance of an intimate partnership inevitably encounters moments where their partner's choices or behaviors trigger a cascade of resentment, frustration, or profound emotional wounding. However, the true interpersonal catastrophe does not lie in the grievance itself, but in our collective inability to transform that pain into a constructive bridge. Instead, we often instinctively construct an impenetrable wall of hostility. In February 2026, as we navigate a high-pressure global landscape characterized by the volatile fluctuations of the forex, gold, and coin markets, compounded by the relentless disruptive pace of the technology sector, our collective neurological threshold for tolerance has been pushed to a razor-thin edge. In such a hypersensitive environment, a single misplaced complaint or a poorly articulated grievance can serve as the definitive spark for an emotional explosion that causes irreparable damage. Our objective today is to master the psychological nuances of communication, learning how to convey our internal hurt in a manner that ensures our partner hears the authentic voice of our pain rather than instinctively recoiling from what they perceive as the calculated blade of our attack. From the rigorous perspective of psycholinguistics, the linguistic architecture of your grievance dictates its reception. When you initiate a confrontation utilizing you-focused statements, for example, "You are consistently inconsiderate of my needs," or "You never prioritize our shared future," you trigger a primal military defense mechanism within the recipient's brain. From a neurobiological standpoint, this linguistic trigger effectively bypasses the prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and empathy, and directly stimulates the amygdala, which issues an immediate fight-or-flight command. My psychological critique of contemporary masculine communication is that during moments of acute agitation, men frequently commit the fallacy of attacking the woman's core identity rather than addressing the specific problematic behavior. When you replace the surgical statement, "I was emotionally wounded by this specific action," with the sweeping generalization, "You are a fundamentally irresponsible person," you are engaging in character assassination. In the 2026 socio-economic landscape, where women occupy pivotal strategic roles in managing complex financial portfolios and AI-driven professional ventures, decimating their psychological pride with toxic vocabulary is not merely an emotional error, it is a systematic sabotage of the motivation that fuels the entire family unit. Furthermore, let us dissect the deeper layer of expressing primary needs. At the heart of every caustic complaint and every lingering grievance, there lies an unmet core need: For instance, when you voice a harsh complaint regarding your wife's perceived overspending in the gold market, your actual underlying psychological need is a desire for long-term financial security and stability. However, if you choose to camouflage this need within the accusation, you are squandering our future. Her response will inevitably be one of defensiveness rather than cooperation. Psychological interpretation teaches us that a truly authoritative and emotionally intelligent man is one who possesses the immense courage to voice his own vulnerability and underlying anxiety. Instead of launching a frontal assault, you must master the I statement protocol. I am experiencing a significant surge of anxiety regarding our financial stability for the upcoming fiscal quarter when I observe these unexpected expenditures. In this linguistic framework, you have leveled no accusations. You have merely granted her access to your internal emotional landscape. This strategic transparency paves the theoretical and practical way for empathy rather than a devastating war of attrition. We must recognize that in the current age of technology, where we are conditioned for rapid-fire, superficial digital interactions, the practice of deep and meaningful dialogue has become an endangered art form that must be consciously cultivated for the survival of love. Surgical removal of toxic vocabulary, distinguishing a justified grievance from an unjustified verbal assault. In this second stage of our clinical deconstruction of verbal communication skills, we must meticulously examine the structural and semantic composition of our sentences during moments of acute relational crisis. From the rigorous perspective of interpersonal relationship psychology, many men mistakenly operate under the fallacy that raw bluntness is synonymous with authentic honesty. However, the reality of emotional intelligence dictates that bluntness without the tempering of diplomatic skill is nothing more than verbal aggression masquerading as truth. In February 2026, as the complexities of modern existence and the instantaneous high-stakes fluctuations in the prices of the dollar and gold have drastically lowered our collective neurological threshold for tolerance, the use of absolute qualifiers, such as always, never, or every time, is akin to pouring high-octane gasoline onto the smoldering embers of domestic anger. When you impulsively tell your spouse, "You never respect my financial priorities," you are effectively and unfairly negating every single instance where she stood as your unwavering ally, fighting alongside you against the economic volatilities of the Forex market. This systemic denial of her efforts erodes the very foundation of a woman's intrinsic motivation to improve her behavior for the sake of the union. My psychological critique of this primitive dialogue style is that men, in their moments of heightened grievance, often embark on a blame-seeking mission rather than a solution-oriented quest. In the high-stakes world of technology and global business, when a system encounters a critical error, expert engineers seek to debug the underlying code rather than punish the individual lines of data. Yet, in our most intimate relationships, we frequently seek to punish our partners with caustic, soul-crushing words. To master this art, you must develop the cognitive capacity to separate the specific behavior from the core identity. For example, if you are legitimately frustrated by your partner's tardiness to a crucial strategic meeting regarding a gold or coin investment, you must strictly refrain from assassinating her character by labeling her as fundamentally disorganized. Instead, you must strategically concentrate on the specific impact of that behavior on your own internal emotional state. You should articulate, "When we arrived late to that particular session, I experienced a surge of acute stress and became genuinely concerned that our professional credibility, which we have worked so hard to build, was at risk." This mode of expression facilitates a psychological opening for apology and restitution, whereas character labeling invites only defensive verbal retaliation and long-term resentment. Furthermore, let us penetrate the deeper layer of Paralinguistics, the power of tone and body language. In 2026, where we have become digitally conditioned to transmit our emotions via sterile applications and emojis, we have dangerously forgotten the primal biological power of vocal resonance and micro-expressions. Clinical psychology has empirically demonstrated that approximately 90% of the message your spouse receives is derived not from your literal vocabulary, but from your biting, sarcastic tone and your judgmental, cold gaze. Even if you articulate the most logically correct sentence, if it is accompanied by a subtle smirk of superiority or a look of condescension, you are transmitting a devastating message of, "I am superior to you." This subconscious drive for superiority is the ultimate executioner of true intimacy. In the competitive, cutthroat arenas of technology and artificial intelligence, superiority might be a necessary tool for survival. But within the sacred sanctuary of the home, you require equanimity and equality. A man who can articulate his grievances in a calm, controlled, and respectful tone, even amidst peak frustration, is providing his wife with the psychological security that our relationship remains a safe harbor even when our opinions are in conflict. Another ubiquitous and catastrophic error is what I call the exhumation of the past during a present grievance. When a discussion is focused on a contemporary financial oversight or a minor neglect, you must strictly forbid yourself from reopening the closed case files from years prior. This tactic ensures that the primary subject of the current dialogue is lost in a fog of historical bitterness, making the woman feel as though you are merely a collection of accumulated resentments, waiting for a single spark to explode. In the rigorous analysis of the coin and currency markets, no sane trader operates based on the obsolete prices of a decade ago. So why, in the economy of your relationship, do you attempt to trade based on your partner's archaic mistakes? To ensure your content is both voluminous and intellectually impactful, you must emphasize this golden rule. Every complaint must remain exclusive to the present moment and the specific behavior at hand. In the subsequent parts, we will explore the profound technique of empathic listening, where we learn to open a psychological window into her world rather than fortifying a defensive shield. We are learning how, in an era of global and technological instability, to build a permanent, unshakable anchor for love using stable, constructive, and dignified words. In the preceding sections, we mastered the architectural nuances of delivering a grievance. However, we now arrive at the most psychologically demanding phase of the dialogue. How do you respond when your spouse initiates a complaint against you? From the perspective of dynamic relationship psychology, the immediate reaction a man exhibits upon hearing criticism is the primary determinant of the longevity of intimacy within that household. In the year 2026, where the neurological strain caused by the perpetual fluctuations in the prices of the dollar, gold, and coins has worn our patience to a razor-thin veneer, most men, upon hearing even the slightest critique, instinctively retreat into a state of reactive defense. They either launch a counteroffensive by highlighting the partner's past errors or boycott the dialogue through a cold, stony silence, a phenomenon known as stonewalling. My psychological critique is that these behaviors are not manifestations of strength, but rather indicators of emotional fragility. Let us penetrate the deeper layer of empathic listening. Genuine listening is not merely the absence of speech, it is a profound cognitive effort to decipher the emotional undercurrent beneath the literal vocabulary. For instance, when your spouse remarks, "You have become obsessively consumed by your technology projects and market analytics," she is not necessarily attempting to devalue your professional ambitions or your career. In reality, she is articulating a vulnerable subtext. "I miss your presence, and I am experiencing a profound sense of emotional isolation." If you, as an authoritative and secure man, can decode this hidden signal instead of erecting a defensive barrier and retorting with, "Well, I am sacrificing myself for the financial welfare of this family," the entire trajectory of the relationship shifts. In the world of artificial intelligence and precision computing, we are trained to isolate signals from noise. In your relationship, you must learn to bypass the noise of anger to truly hear the signal of unmet need. One of the most potent strategic techniques to amplify intimacy in 2026 is the concept of emotional validation. It is crucial to emphasize that validation does not equate to a 100% agreement with the partner's objective claims. Rather, it signifies that you acknowledge her fundamental right to experience that specific emotion. To expand this concept for your audience, you must explain that phrases such as, "I can certainly understand why that situation caused you such distress," or "You are right to feel that way. I might feel the same if I were in your position," act as a psychological fire extinguisher, instantly neutralizing the flames of a burgeoning conflict. A man who does not fear hearing criticism is a man who possesses an unshakable faith in his internal core value. He understands that an error in managing a currency expenditure or a momentary behavioral lapse does not define him as a failure in the grand balance sheet of life. Finally, in this analytical segment, we must address the concept of temporal transparency. In our current era of hypervelocity, we are constantly oscillating between analyzing the coin markets and attending high-stakes professional meetings, and when our spouse begins to speak, half of our cognitive attention is often elsewhere. This fragmented listening is perhaps the most subtly insulting behavior a man can exhibit toward a woman. She requires your eyes, not merely your ears. To ensure your script is both voluminous and impactful, you must stress that a 10-minute dialogue conducted with absolute, undistracted focus is infinitely more valuable than an hour of physical presence devoid of mental engagement. In the final part, we will move toward the operational strategies of the reconstruction protocol to ensure that the residues of conflict do not permanently discolor the walls of your affection. The post-explosion reconstruction protocol: how to mitigate the aftershocks of a heated argument. We have finally arrived at the definitive terminal of this vital clinical deconstruction. Thus far, we have mastered the architectural nuances of how to deliver a grievance and how to listen with empathic precision. However, the raw reality of life in February 2026 is that even with the most rigorous adherence to psychological principles, control can occasionally vanish, and a dialogue can degenerate into a full-scale confrontation. In a world where the relentless bombardment of news regarding dollar, gold, and coin prices perpetually assaults our nervous systems, the occurrence of conflict is statistically inevitable. Yet, what distinguishes an authoritative, high-value man from a psychologically fragile one is his specialized capacity for damage control and post-conflict recovery. In systemic psychology, we refer to this critical phase as active emotional repair. If, following a heated dispute, you leave the emotional space filled with heavy silence or narcissistic stubbornness, you are effectively allowing the toxic residues of that anger to settle like corrosive rust upon the very foundations of your heart. The primary golden strategy in this reconstruction phase is the 20-minute to 24-hour rule. If a discussion escalates into a state of emotional flooding, you must never allow the resulting emotional vacuum to persist for more than a single diurnal cycle. My psychological critique of many modern couples is that they weaponize silence as a tool for punitive retaliation. However, in the high-velocity context of 2026, where the rapid evolution of technology and intense social pressures are already overwhelming, prolonged stonewalling only serves to accumulate unsustainable levels of supplementary stress. The visionary man is the one who possesses the ego strength to take the inaugural step toward breaking the relational ice. This initial move does not necessarily imply a total admission of guilt. Rather, it is a profound declaration that our sacred union is infinitely more valuable to me than my individual pride. You might articulate, "My dear, we were both wounded by the words exchanged today. Let us prioritize restoring peace to our home now, so we can revisit the core issue with rational clarity later." Let us now penetrate the technique of surgical removal of harmful vocabulary. Once the initial storm of the argument has subsided, you are ethically and psychologically obligated to offer a sincere apology for the manner of your delivery, even if you remain steadfast in the content of your message. If, in the zenith of agitation triggered by Forex market losses or professional tech-based pressures, you uttered a caustic or demeaning phrase, do not attempt to ignore it. A sincere apology directed at your tone or choice of words transmits a vital signal to the woman that you still hold her core character in the highest esteem. In the era of artificial intelligence, we are trained to patch system errors to ensure optimal performance. In your relationship, you must patch your behavioral bugs with the same technical diligence. This radical transparency ensures the psychological security of your household against the massive socio-economic fluctuations of modern life. In conclusion, we must emphasize the concept of post-resolution positive reinforcement. When you successfully navigate a treacherous verbal minefield and reach a state of mutual understanding, you must sanctify this victory. This celebration does not require extravagance. It can be as simple as a shared cup of tea or a brief walk conducted without the intrusion of mobile devices or technology. To ensure your podcast script reaches its most impactful crescendo, you must emphasize this. A real man is not one who never engages in conflict, but one who possesses the sophisticated skill to make his home warmer and more resilient after every storm. Do not let the fluctuating shadows of gold prices or the daunting headlines of the technological world extinguish the light of intimacy in your sanctuary. In episode 14, we will dive into the highly sensitive topic of the psychology of in-law relationships, how to construct respectful boundaries without alienation, where we learn to maintain the emotional sovereignty of our two-person life.